All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back after a 2 week break. We were celebrating birthdays, Matthew, and Easter and all that stuff. But we are back now, episode 37 for the Samurai Brothers.
Yep.
And the weather's been kind of cold lately. How's it up there for you?
It's been colder too. It actually rained this weekend, believe it or not, which is
Funny enough.
unusual. It's unusual in the San Joaquin Valley in the spring. It's been an unusually, so here's the thing, it's been unusually wet, but not in terms of, because like a few years ago it was so wet that Lake Tulare actually reemerged because the water had to go somewhere, so it went into the dry lake bed that used to be Lake Tulare, and then that was a few years ago. But this year it's been wet, but it's been more spread out. So it's more like it's been like in a manageable manner, and it's been like later in the time. This is unusual. It's unusual to get this kind of weather this late.
Okay. Well, we hadn't touched on this topic for a while, so we are going to get right back into One Piece. The chapter 1143, I believe we had been seeing the God Knights. They were making their way into Elbaf, obviously. And I think also, yes, they have implemented their devious plan to kidnap the giant children. So your thoughts on how this has been going so far?
Yeah. So, well, and then this obviously we'll get to it, but there was clearly a reason for it in this mention in the most recent chapter, and it's they've got a purpose, and they're going for it. So
yeah, definitely. So I think one of the things we're seeing, obviously in 1144, it looks like that Frankie and Ripley, who is the wife of Scopper Gaban, they've reached a facility. They've also met up with Lilith and Bonnie. But it looks like the One Piece world is a lot older than what's been given out so far, because they've been talking about how the facility is probably more than 3,000 years old. And we obviously know about the Void Century, which has happened 800 and plus years before the current time. And then you had the Void Century, and then you had the war that occurred, 900 something years before that. So this is kind of we're starting to get into ancient territory now.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where the One Piece, the One Piece world is old. It's got history, and we kind of saw that when we've seen that over time, especially when we did the Skypiea arc, and we saw that there was already this ancient civilization that had, but and that was several hundred years before the current events. So. But then Wano also, where over thousands of years, the island filled up and buried old Wano. So we already saw that this is a thousands of years old nation or world.
Yeah, and
but then of course with the revelation of Egghead, we found out that it might be older than that, and there's parts of this world we haven't seen because it's literally buried, kind of similar to ours, because during the Ice Age, there was entire parts of there was entire civilizations that existed on lower that was buried with water that we haven't seen. So,
and then there's always Atlantis.
I was reading about that recently, like kind of a fantasy, but yeah, I was yeah, Atlantis.
So to kind of go over chapter notes from the fandom page for 1144. So obviously, Frankie and Ripley finding the giant facility. And then we've got some other notes to, let me see here. Yeah, they're finding that the children have been not rescued, kidnapped via devil fruit abilities, which we saw, which is that the God Knights are obviously this was obvious pretty much that the God Knights are way different from the normal, and I'm gonna call them just kind of normal, um, ignorant world nobles, right? Because those ones, they just like to do whatever, and they got their bubbles that they use when they're in the lower parts of the world, right? But the God Knights are not afraid to use devil fruits.
Yeah, which is something that the normal world nobles, not only do the normal world nobles not do that, but they will actually, as a sign of dominance, actually force feed, regular people that they take as slaves devil fruits, like what happened with the Boa sisters,
Mm-hmm.
and who else did that happen with?
Yeah, it did happen with the Boa sisters. I don't know if I remember any other cases, but I would not be surprised that it did.
Yeah, so they're it's like they look at that as more of a sign of
Yeah, dominance.
dominance and a sign of inferiority, almost like they're further making them freak
Yeah.
shows. But then, whereas what's it called, but whereas the God Knights are not afraid to use devil fruits to their ends. But there is, I forget which God Knight still has a bubble.
Oh, that would be I think Killingham was his name.
Yeah. Well, and then also the other nobles that aren't afraid to do that would also be the five elders.
Yeah, although I think though with yeah, this it's kind of an interesting one with Killingham because he doesn't wear the normal suit that they wear. I don't know. He seems to be a bit of an outlier to me for some reason. I don't know
Well,
why.
and then we haven't seen him in his human form at all. He's always been in
Yeah,
that
he's in the Keating form of the
yeah.
dragon fruit. Which to people who don't know, the Keating is it's a mythical monster in Japanese mythology.
Yeah, it's a type of dragon
Right.
because there's multiple types of dragons, but yeah, kind of more that traditional dragon that looks more like a serpent.
Other
And
notes.
there's also the what's it called, the namesake and the mascot of the Kirin beer.
Yes, that is true. Although there's a note.
Japanese beer is definitely unique in its own way.
Yeah.
Like, I drink that more often than I drink American beer. It's just like, well, not that I drink beer a whole lot anyways. I'm
Mhm.
almost a teetotaler. I only drink, for those of you who don't know, John drinks more than I do. Dad drinks more than I do. I will only drink once or twice a year because after my college years,
Days.
I kind well, for me it was that bad experience when on my 21st birthday where I was worshiping the porcelain god, let's just say, and yeah, so yeah, but
Anyway,
I just generally don't like drinking, so.
so one more note before we move on to the next chapter, which I thought was interesting. Gunko is a fan of Brooks' music.
Yeah, to the point that, well,
He was
again,
listening to a TD.
yeah, yeah, we'll again we'll
So yeah.
mention that as an interesting development in the latest chapter.
So if we go to 1145, which this is more focusing on, we see a more focus on Luffy interacting with Loki, and Loki talking about how he was visited by a red-haired man. And obviously, with him being in the state that he is, having been attacked by Shamrock and Gunko, and how Loki is bringing up the red-haired man, obviously that's going to hit a note with Luffy, and that somehow, but see, it seems that no one can differentiate between the two, right now, because probably no one knows of the existence of Shamrock in the lower world. Your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, because Shamrock kind of really hasn't made too many appearances outside. Well, we only heard about the God Knights recently, which means they're a small elite, probably the only fighting force of the unless you want to include the five
CP0.
elders. Yeah, they're the only currently active fighting force of the world nobles, but because of how few there are, they're a small elite fighting force. So they're like special forces. It's like
what's crazy?
It's like how most people do not see, like we hear about Spetsnaz, we hear about the Delta Force, the Army Rangers, the Navy SEALs, but we hear about them, but we don't see them in action all that often. That's because they're these specialized units that only fight, on very specialized missions. So the
But
God
what's
Knight.
crazy? What's crazy is, they had such a difficult time trying to fight CP9 when, they first encountered them.
Oh yeah.
And then, the fact that CP0 answers only to the world nobles. But then you have, but then now the God Knights are out and about. And now what we look at is, like you said, the God Knights are the elite fighting force of the world nobles themselves. And now we have to look at it as the world nobles would then consider CP0 to be the foot soldiers.
Yeah, essentially.
And of their circle,
Fighting
in
force.
the world government. And
Well,
CP0.
actually, I don't even know if they'd consider them that, considering that they basically look at the Marines as the foot soldiers, regardless of
Yeah, but
rank.
the foot soldiers are probably ants in their minds. The Marines are nothing to them, right? Because any humans they look at them as completely less than them. They're not
So
even
you're
human.
so you're saying that that CP0 would probably be more like shock troopers?
Probably.
Yeah, probably.
That's a good way of putting that out there.
Yeah, they're the tip of the spear that you send in when you want something done.
Right. Like they would probably send them in if the God Knights don't want to risk any of their people first.
Right.
Yeah, which is a good way of looking at that. So it looks like obviously the God Knights are trying to put out more distractions in 11:45. Because there's a fire being set to the Atom Tree, and that's going on, and they're trying to get the kids to walk
Dreams.
into it. Yeah, all the dreams and stuff going on. And I don't know if we had discussed this earlier, but the dreams, all the monsters that have been coming up, around the island are the manifestations, are, I guess, true
The children's
manifestations
nightmares.
of the dream. Yes, of the children's nightmares. So that's an interesting thing that was developing out of all that, right?
Well, and then a lot of the dreams are because Elbaf is basically the what's called the One Piece world equivalent of the of Norse mythology. You've got a bunch of Norse creatures that we'd see in
Right.
our world Norse mythology, except inserted into the One Piece world Elbaf mythology.
Right. Like obviously the Vermungan and stuff, and other things. But yeah, so they're trying to, and then I guess in a way, Luffy is now trying to get Loki back up. You know, he's trying to feed him and all that stuff and get him up and running. The new giant pirates are also there. And obviously there's this, animosity between Loki and Hyaldine as brothers, because obviously it's suspected, the whether or not it's actually true for us as readers, whether Loki actually did kill Harald, their father, or not.
He did make one of that. He did mention, like hinted in one of those lines, that he may not have actually.
Right.
Well, if he did kill him, he didn't, like, he hinted that he might not have done it for malicious reasons. Like, they've portrayed him as being this bad evil person.
I think the most telling thing about this chapter, and I think, Matthew, you might have realized it, was a pirate that Loki met when he was a child.
Oh, right, yeah.
So he obviously, this person is silhouetted. Loki wants this pirate to take him with him. Pirate refuses. And but then Loki, in order to kind of settle things, he challenges this pirate to duel, and obviously that would mean that if he won, then he would make the pirate take him with him on his adventures.
That's similar to. Oh well, I'll let you talk it out, and then I'll talk about the similarities.
So obviously we see then the end of the fight, and this pirate beat Loki up pretty badly. And another crewmate who was there says, "You don't have to use a blade on the kid." And then the response to that is, "Shut up, Newgate." And when you look at the kind of the silhouette and stuff, and obviously Loki says, "I was born in the wrong era," meaning that, he was too young to be able to go on the adventures. But the fact that this pirate says, "Shut up, Newgate," and it was a long time ago, so we know that there's only one person that Loki would have fought. So, Matthew, your turn.
One person that would have had the ability to say "shut up" to Newgate, and still, especially someone who specifically said Newgate, and the what's it called? The like you said, the silhouette. Basically, it's rocks. And it's kind of funny because between the flashback in Egghead, where they mention Newgate, they mention Garp, and we've seen a bunch of Goldie Roger. It's like the similarities between Will of the Deep. We clearly have a difference between the smarter D's and let's just say the more simple D's.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if it's like they talk about Rocks like he was this
malicious
guy, and he might have been, but it sounds like he might have had a similar drive to what. Well, and then Roger, it's like initially Roger came off as the sophisticated guys, and while there are D's like
Blackbeard.
What?
Blackbeard?
No, Blackbeard's kind of simple too. No. Law.
Oh, Law. Yeah.
Yeah, there's these like Law who are genuinely more sophisticated, smarter guys. And I'm trying to think of other. There are D's that are smarter like him, but I think there's clearly an indication that the D's that are driven might actually be driven by more of they might have a drive, but they're also aware of the fact that they have shortcomings. And that's where they get these crews of people to fill in where they are. So it's possible that while Rocks might have actually indulged in stuff like that, there might be members of that crew that might have been like I don't know who it would be, but there might have been a crew member that was similar to like a Robin on that in the
Mhm.
Rocks.
Maybe. I mean, there's all sorts of,
It's
I'm almost certain that we are going to see a lot more members come up. Obviously, we saw a lot of the more infamous ones. Three Yonkos came from that group. We saw what's his name? Golden Lion Shiki from that group. I mean, there's a lot of infamous ones, but yes, you're right. We could be seeing someone who had a vested interest in the history, and I'm very certain that Rox also, because of what his ultimate goals were, that he was also interested in the history, and he probably wanted to turn it upside down, kind of in the way that Luffy. I would say Luffy isn't intentionally trying to turn things upside down, but because of the One Piece and the situation that we are going to see once the One Piece is found, that things are going to really, turn upside down.
yeah, and yeah. So I'm really, but and another thing to consider. Again, we find that um Roger and Luffy are very similar in terms of their personalities. So I'm oh another D that I was thinking of that's kind of more on the D's plural. The what's it called? The Nefertiri family. They're more on the smarter side. What's his name? Dragon is kind
Oh,
of yeah.
and one we found recently, which was Clover.
Oh yeah. So
Clover was a. Go
yeah.
ahead.
So there are these more sophisticated D's that we're finding, and but then we've also got kind of more the simpletons who have more of a drive than anything else and
Yeah,
are willing to partner with and
the
you
right
did mention
groups.
Blackbeard. Blackbeard's kind of an in-between guy because he
Yeah,
had a drive.
he has a drive, but he's also calculating too.
Yeah, he's calculating. He's more calculating than Luffy. Let's be
Oh
perfectly
yeah,
honest.
definitely.
He's more
Luffy's on the far end of the drive section.
yeah, but he's clearly a reckless guy. Like he went into Impel Down without a plan
Yeah,
without a
only to
concrete
rescue
plan.
Ace. Yeah,
Yeah, he went in with more of a plan than Luffy, but he didn't go in with a concrete this is what we're going to do. He had more of a let's get in there and try to figure it's like I know what I want to do, but let's kind of figure things out as we go along. Whereas Luffy was like, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to get him out come hell or high water. But well, and then another thing is something that is mentioned. A lot of people knew this. This keeps getting bringing up, particularly in Grand Line Review. He brings this up a lot, but a lot of people knew about, for example, the what was the challenge called? The um what was the thing called where Chopper was taken briefly?
Oh, Davy back.
Yeah, yeah. People mentioned the Davy back fight and how it's this long tradition. I don't think but and how the Foxy crew kind of might have actually been the ones who made it more of this like this basically this
Mainstream.
comedic show. Because if you think about it, how in the world would this group of hodgepodge, the Rocks crew, this group of hodgepodge, this crew who didn't have camaraderie, and after that, where they spread and they were at each other's throats, how in the world would a group like that be willing to come under one banner? And a lot, this theory keeps being brought up is that it was the original Davy back fight, which might have been this big old bloody affair. But like I said, these crew, it's like a lot of these people had their own crews afterwards, and they it's like They were warriors. You had a an Amazon lily empress. You had and then you had 3 future emperors. You had multiple other crew
Well,
members.
and you bring a good point because what's his name? The chef from the Big Mom crew. He and Lin Lin had partnered together, before she was on the Rock's pirate crew. So you bring up a good point, whether or not she lost in a possible Davy back fight. That's something to consider. It's possible that maybe a lot of these guys were captains, and somehow got, roped
Yeah,
into
and
joining
well,
the crew.
if you think about it, there's insinuations that a lot of these people
Oh
were
yeah.
captains before they were part of the Rock's crew. So it's possible that they were captains and then they joined and then they might have
Yeah.
well, it's possible. It's also possible that their crews basically got absorbed into the Rocks and then they factioned off after things settled.
Well, to finish off chapter 1145, the Jinbei does come to the rescue and put out the fire, where the kids excuse me, where the kids were being walked to. So obviously, Jinbei to the rescue there, but Junko finds the source of, everyone. So he does find the ship that Nami and Jinbei and Usopp, and Brook are on. So now it's like we're gonna go into chapter 1146 to kind of see what's going on here.
I'm kind of surprised that Jinbei was so easy to capture because he's
Uh,
supposed to be part of what's now being called the Monster Quartet.
oh, I just love the fan terms for everything. It's kind of like with the original big three of
The Monster
shonen manga.
Trio.
No. I'm talking about like the original big three of shonen manga, which was One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach, back in the early days of American fandom here. But yes, so obviously we've got well, the one thing we see, and this was also because at first I guess it wasn't confirmed. I guess the community was they were questioning whether Gunko was an actual world noble or not. And but in the opening panel of chapter 1146, which is probably what we're going to be have enough time for today, since our timer is now running down. When they call her a human intruder, her response to that is, "You dare call me a human." So that right away tells us that she is a world noble.
Yeah, even though she hasn't been called saint
Yes.
like Gunko, but
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing. So yeah, the children are still under the spell of Killingham. Let's see, where else are we at? So now it's like now we've got this fight that's going to go on, which is between Gunko and then Nami, Brook, Usopp, and Jinbei. But yes, Gunko is using her devil fruit powers, and I don't know if it's actually confirmed what her devil fruit is. But she uses those arrows, and she seems to be able to direct things, whether they're attacks or something of that nature. My guess is it's either attacks or physical things. She can direct it to go somewhere, and I think that's what her power is.
one other thing I did think of, this is the group of people who aren't trained in hockey except for
Jinbei.
and Usopp, who's
Usopp,
observation.
well, yeah, Usopp is a kind of, although I'm kind of curious. I don't know if Usopp has actually told anyone or if he realizes what that he awakened
Yeah,
the hockey
he's
powers.
got raw observation hockey, but he's not trained
I don't
on it, I don't
well,
think.
and see, because my thing is has he told anyone about that? And I don't think I've seen anywhere where he's actually talked about that experience with anyone.
Well, let's be honest. The big three have mentioned hockey, but they haven't mentioned the specifics or training on that but then again, they all went through very specific trainings based off of their ability. So so them trying to teach that to Usopp might be a little difficult, especially because they're not snipers. So
Right.
it's
Also, here's the other thing, because if you're right in the sense that his observation hockey is a little bit raw right now, because if he had been able, if his power was actually not awakened, but if it was more trained, he would have seen her coming. Now, like for instance, we saw that like Sanji, Zoro, and Luffy, all three of them know that each other have observation hockey because they all detect. Remember back in Fishman Island when the one blob guy was trying to kidnap Shirahoshi,
yeah.
and they all detected. They said, "Hey, there's a rat in the palace or something like that," and they went and they caught him because they detected him, when he was trying to kidnap Shirahoshi, and they stopped him.
Yeah, so they're all aware of the
So
observation.
they're all aware that each other has, observation hockey, but and so that's why I say that Usopp doesn't really have it developed yet.
Speaking of which, I think the big three
I mean,
are
the monster trio.
yeah, I think the monster trio are gonna be the ones who are gonna face off against the three unless Robin are we talking about 1147 yet?
No, and I don't think we're gonna have enough time. We're gonna have to do that next week because yeah, we've only got 5 minutes left on the clock. That's what you get for using Fisu, but hey, we'll get past it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they make attacks. Um, Obviously, Gunko diverts those attacks to go right back at everyone. So, obviously, their power levels compared to hers are not there yet. Trying to have an equal fight with her.
And these people are not weak fighters. I mean,
No, none of them are weak fighters. But it's just that there's just times when it's like certain other stronger individuals are just going to be way better.
does Jinbei not have armament hockey?
He does. I know that he does.
But I guess you'll need a combination of armament and observation at minimum against these people.
Yeah. So obviously, what we're seeing now, as we're closing out 1146, obviously I think the five elders and the God Knights goal in this, because it looks like with all the things that's been going on in the world government is seeing it, the Marines are seeing it, the elders are seeing it, Emu is seeing it, that it's time to plunge the world into war. And so they are, and the reason why the God Knights are on Elbaf is because they are trying to get the Giants on their side, because apparently the side that the Giants choose, according to Gunko, is going to have a profound effect on the outcome of the war.
Yeah, they'll definitely have an advantage, not necessarily. I mean, Giants don't determine a winning factor, but they'll definitely have an advantage.
Yeah.
But as we've established, the monster trio are not on the playing field yet.
Right. One thing I do have to say, and then as the chapter finishes, so Shepard Summers finishes his fight against Saul, and obviously he's telling Robin and Chopper not to reveal themselves. But Summers gives off a clue here, which probably, in my mind, says who is truly responsible for Harold's death, because Summer says that stupid Harold went and screwed it up. I'm paraphrasing that. So I think that the God Knights were already moving on trying to get the Giants involved, and I get the feeling that Harold didn't want to involve Elbaf in whatever fight that they were trying to prepare for.
So yeah, it's indicated that he may have been he moved them towards passivity because he didn't want to he was trying to do what was best for his people, and it sounds like he paid for that with his life.
Yeah. So that concludes our episode for today, ladies and gentlemen. This was One Piece 1144 to 1146, Matthew, and we're gonna have a lot more stuff to talk about because we'll be trying to get to 1147, but then we had the U.S. Open this weekend. Some pretty big things that happened, and I think the biggest spoiler of it all, which will be interesting to talk about next week, is Zahid Valencia defeating Kyle Dake in the finals. And so there'll be a lot to talk about then. And also the Haru Basho Banzuke also came out today. So we'll be trying to talk about that next week as well. So
and well, should we preview the U.S. Open, the U.S. Sumo Open, since we're gonna be in it
next week? Yeah, that'd be a good idea. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be signing off now. And as always, we appreciate you tuning in to watch our discussions. And until then, we will see you later.